This company is the closest to commercializing fusion out of everybody else on the planet. And so we're going to stay the course. We've already made application for our regulatory approvals, our licensing approvals.
Welcome back, everybody, to another online business briefing brought to you by smallcapvoice.com. And I am your host, Stuart Smith. And we are 25 years into our CEO roundups, our interviews with the C-levels of small and micro cap companies. So we want to thank you first and foremost for coming along with us on this journey. We're welcoming back to the show a company that we spoke with late in 2025 that was making incredible strides at that time with so much news on the press wire. Let me give you that ticker symbol first because I want you to bring up the press wire first and foremost. That's RNWF. The name of the company is Renewal Fuels Incorporated, operating as American Fusion. We talked a little bit about that in our first interview, and we also spoke to Brent Nelson, who is the CEO of Kepler Fusion. And we're going to welcome back Brent today, but we're also welcoming back a new guest, and I want you to learn more about him, so we'll bring him on the show in just a minute. But bring up this press release for me, if you will. February 6, 2026, that's the date line. Renewal Fuels Incorporated, operating as American Fusion, appoints Dr. John E. Brandenburg as Chief Technology Officer. I want to point out, if you look at that news, there's been a lot of press releases since then. The C-levels are filling up at this company. You've had a lot of different people come on to the company in recent, well, just in the past month, to be honest with you. Let me bring on our two guests today. Let's first say hello once again to Brent Nelson. Brent, how are you, sir?
Doing fine, thanks, Stuart.
Wonderful to have you back. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas season and New Year's. It's great to talk to you in the new year because once again, your company's putting out a tremendous amount of news. And let's meet our new Chief Technical Officer. That's Dr. John Brandenburg. Dr. Brandenburg, thank you for making time for us today.
It's a pleasure and honor to be on your show, Stuart.
Hey, wonderful to have you. So let's start with you, Dr. Brandenburg. There's a lot in the press release that I just pointed out, February 6th, using that ticker symbol RNWF. But what is it you'd like our audience to know about you and your passion for these fusion technologies and working now with American Fusion?
I have, since my childhood, even before I can remember, I was fascinated with electricity and magnetism. My uncle was worked on the Manhattan Project during World War II, the atomic bomb project, and he was my inspiration, Dr. William Surrey. And then I grew up in the age of Sputnik, where we were encouraged to become rocket scientists. But I began really becoming intrigued with the problem of fusion energy with the devices they were building because it was all about electricity and magnetism and in a sense the physics of the stars. I was very interested in space because of the moon race. So it all just naturally gelled. But the really crucial moment was sitting in a gas line that was miles long in 1973 and the Yom Kippur War, where we had the gas embargo. And I thought, I'm going to solve this problem. We're never going to have to go through this again. Um, uh, so I decided to make that my career goal was to harness fusion energy back in 1975 when I entered graduate school. I got my bachelor's degree in physics at a local university. And in Oregon, Southern Oregon University, fine place. And then I moved down to California with my young bride and started graduate school there. And I worked at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, then a center of magnetic fusion research. And I went to a graduate school named after its founder, Edward Teller. We called it Teller Tech. God blessed me, and I was able to finish and get my degree. And then, because of the geopolitical aspects of fusion, this is the way I describe it, the funding for fusion energy in this country was really cut. And it turns out that there were good reasons for that. We wanted to win the Cold War. I can go into detail on that if you want. But in the meantime, I was determined to stay in the fusion game. So I went to Sandia National Labs, another nuclear weapons lab in Albuquerque. I worked on directed energy weapons and also fusion there. And my career course was just sort of set. Everywhere I went, there would be a fusion project to work on.
Mhm.
So I just made it my entire. It's the core. It's been the core of my career in for 50 years.
And I
Time.
noticed that reading about you, how deeply passionate about this space you are. So I
Yes.
appreciate your background. And we'll come back to you, of course, with several questions and we'll learn more about your personality through those responses. Wonderful hearing from you, Dr. Brandenburg. Brent, let's go back to you because you set forth in our last interview some lofty goals for the company here just in 2026 that if achieved, it'll be a springboard into 2027 and beyond. So you previously stated about having the fully operational 100 megawatt unit by the end of 2026. What are some of the items that you're unpacking and working on now? I mean, obviously bringing on folks like Dr. Brandenburg has to be a big part of what you're looking to do, Brent, but what are you working on now to keep this goal attainable here in 2026?
Well, I think the bottom line is our goal to be putting electrons either behind the meter or in front of the meter by the end of the year. That's our goal.
Okay.
And, Dr. Brandenburg has been working with Kepler for the last 7 or 8 years since we started the project. And so now it was time basically to come out of the vault and into the public view. And it just so happened that we came out and two or three other fusion companies came out at the same time. We think our approach is different. It's aneutronic, doesn't create excess neutrons, so it's non-radioactive. And we think that we think, it's our belief that because of that single fact, I think we're going to be successful commercially. I'm a technology guy. We develop technologies. You have to tie a bow around them and commercialize them. And
Yep.
this company is the closest to commercializing fusion out of everybody else on the planet. And so we're going to stay the course. We've already made application for our regulatory approvals, our licensing approvals here in Texas. That's a whole nother story, that goes back a couple of years. And I basically called them in January and said, hey, where are we going on this thing? And they said, well, we're not even thinking about it until 2028. And I said, that's not going to do it. I need answers now. And so they kicked it back to the state of Texas. Thank God we're in Texas. And the process has started. We've already put in our application. Our application went in last week, and it's about a 6 or 8 week application process. We've applied for 9 different models of Texatron, dealing from half a megawatt all the way up to 500 megawatts. So we've gone in for our licensing there. The only real hurdles that we're seeing, going behind the meter is going to be easy. We can go behind the meter tomorrow with an operating Texatron. And when I say behind the meter, it's not pumping into the grid. When you go into the grid, there's a whole bunch of another layer of regulatory stuff that you have to go through. There's the utility you have to deal with. There's all the needs of the utility. There's the needs of the government. And that process takes anywhere from a year to 2 years. So we've already started that process. We're bringing on a chief revenue officer here in the next couple of weeks. And his sole job is going to be to bring in power purchase agreements. And once we start getting our power purchase agreements in place, then we have a whole bunch of mini goals that we need to meet. I think that's going to be our initial focus is behind the meter, because going into the meter, it's going to take us a year or two, or hopefully less, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'm going to bring up our last interview again, and I'm hoping our viewers today who may be tuning in for the very first time regarding this company with the ticker symbol RNWF, go back to that first interview because we break down exactly what Texatron is and how it operates and how it is a neutronic, which is a game changer for not only this company, but this entire fusion space. But you brought up Texas, and we all know I'm in Texas as well. And the benefits of being here, we've got clients down in Webster right next to NASA where you are. You've got so much going on. There's a whole immersion technology side where they're working on cooling on data centers. Texas really has become a favorable state maybe has always been because of NASA towards tech companies like yourself. But you mentioned a company, a utility company. And so, how are things progressing with your North Texas utility partner? Will Kepler be preparing large scale deployment anytime in the future across multiple utility regions after this initial proof of concept?
Yeah, I think when I say the focus is going to be behind the meter, we've already talked to some data centers. We're talking to one company that is actually building 70 mini data centers. And
Wow.
so each one is going to need their own power. So that would be an easy way to, get 70 of our Texatrons distributed throughout the United States because these mini data centers are set up in different places. We've been approached by the military. The other day I had a conversation with a gentleman said, "Will this thing work up in the Arctic?" Like for instance, Greenland. So I mean, it's out there, and it's out there, and they're going to need lots of power in the next 3 years, or over the next 3 or 4 years. The amount of electricity needed by America is going to be 30% more than what exists.
Yeah,
And
I've seen some
how are they
staggering
going to do that?
statistics. I've seen staggering statistics in this regard, and that's why it made so much sense to talk to you when we talked to you, but also the functionality of what you described in our first interview. For those who didn't tune into that one, this is because of the aneutronic element of it. We're talking smaller. When we talk about things in America, we always think bigger, faster, stronger. In this case, we want smaller, stronger, and we'll take the faster too. But we want smaller because, again, this geography and what you're talking about with the size of data centers coming down and being so many of them, you can roll this out on a semi trailer, basically, maybe even smaller. We talked about in our last one, Brent. You can correct me on that as I also bring up this next question, because we talked another thing that was very intriguing to me, and I'm getting this in the first three questions. And then Dr. Brandenburg, we're coming back to you on some highly technical sides of things. But the revenue model really spoke to me as well. So it was power as a service model. We all know software as a service model. So now we can sort of extrapolate what power as a service model might be. You highlighted the competitive pricing versus hydropower and other major energy sources. And let's talk about any refinements in the cost per kilowatt projections as engineering advances. And again, Dr. Brandenburg, you can jump on this. What early feedback are you receiving from your potential power as a service, aka PPA customers?
We're actually very competitive in the state of Texas at 6.25 cents a kilowatt hour. I mean, I pay 14 cents a kilowatt hour in my house. You have to add, generation, transmission, everything else, but 6.25 cents a kilowatt hour is, I think, a very good sweet spot for us in Texas. I know that some of the utilities that are trying to go, or not utilities, but some of the data centers going behind the meter, they're up 10 cents, 15 cents a kilowatt hour in Texas. So then let's go to California. It's 40 cents a kilowatt hour. There's 5 states in America that are over 40 cents a kilowatt hour. It's absolutely crazy. So
Brent, let
we
me
know
ask you a
we're
question. Let me
competitive.
jump in that real quick then, because
Yep.
that's maybe what people don't understand. Is your margin then inside that? If you're at six and a
Uh-huh.
half cents,
At 6.25 cents a kilowatt hour,
Mhm.
our EBITDA is about somewhere between 70 and 80%.
Fantastic. Okay.
It's,
I'm sorry to
it's
jump in, but
yeah,
that
no,
is
that's
the
good.
music to the ears that potential investors want to hear.
Yeah, it's it's something everybody needs, and it's at a price everybody can afford.
Well, Dr. Brandenburg, let's talk a little bit about some of the applications. In our last interview, but I know you know this with your extensive history there at Kepler, we talked about the Department of Defense. We talked about actually the Department of War, I should say, NASA. Remote islands was something that jumped out to me, and remote communities.
Yes.
When you talk about Greenland and Iceland, those are remote communities. Which verticals do you think show the most promise, Dr. Brandenburg, for your platform and these pilot programs?
Well, one of the great traditions of a lot of isolated spots is the big diesel churning out power,
Mhm.
and that's good. They've been highly optimized, but we think we can do better with fewer moving parts.
Right.
And it's hard to improve on a big diesel generator set, but we're going to try it. We're going to do it. We are going to do it because we can produce a lot more power for the same footprint than the traditional big diesel.
Far cleaner power. That's another
much
advantage.
cleaner.
And Brent, we talked about how easy it is to maintain. The maintenance costs would be far lower. I mean, these diesels wear out. Lord knows I've got a diesel. I'm in Texas, as I pointed out, who doesn't have a diesel out here. We talked about how easy it is to maintain these units as well.
Really, there's so few moving parts. There's really nothing to break. So once the thing is set up, the only thing you have to do is put fuel in the thing, and the refueling is going to be. I think we've got it set up for about once a year, but I think there's a way we can put 2 tanks on a unit. So once one tank is depleted, we can go to the second tank.
The technology and your background are both incredibly exciting. As a corporate company, though, a public company, Brent, obviously it's important that it's so important that you talked about your new chief revenue officer that's coming on soon. So, you talked about the strong margins earlier as well, Brent. What capital requirements, what are some of the funding requirements the company may need to get to commercial deployment?
Yeah, well, we're in the process of doing a registration statement, and in the registration statement, we're telling the SEC we're trying to raise $50 million to build 2 or 3 demonstration and commercial units. So that's the plan going forward. The registration's going to be going in. I think it may even be in by the end of this week. Everything is moving as fast as
Well,
we.
yeah, and we talked about that in our last interview, and we spent a lot of time focusing on the here in 2026. Future-wise, though, and I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, success looks like what you mentioned, being in front of or behind the meter here and actually having a working prototype here in 2026. As we look forward, even though past that, 2027, 28, I'm assuming being a part of or being considered for government programs, government assistance, these types of things in the revenue sphere, plus deployments, things of that nature. A big picture, where do you want to see your company, Brent, in in the here and now and beyond? Let's put it that way.
To have megawatts of deployment. So I think for 2027, I think we wanted up to maybe 500 megawatts of power, out there. For 2028, a gigawatt, and a gigawatt more, and then 75 units in 2029, 250 units in 200 in 2030. And then, after that, we can go to 1,000 units easily, because really all we're doing is creating the same widget, and they're all fueled the same. There's very few moving parts. We've created at Kepler, we've created what we call a 100 megawatt unit. So whether if it's a 100 megawatt unit, or 25 megawatt units, or 5 20 megawatt units, that equals 100 megawatts. So the numbers I've just given you are 100 megawatt units that we have deployed and operating out there in the generating electricity.
All right, we've got to wrap up this interview, but I'm going to ask you both this question, and so we'll kind of keep the responses as tight as we can. I guess I will say, Dr. Brandenburg. In other words, this one's a tough one because it's the macro, but we're going to get
All
a
right.
macro answer from you. So the macro is, Dr. Brandenburg, how do you see Kepler shaping the future of distributed fusion power?
I see it revolutionizing power. This device works, and I have 50 years of background. I've seen all the mistakes that have been made, and I have the benefit of them. We're going to do this thing, and we're going to go for the stars.
Perfect.
The
Love that.
macro, it's the cosmic. It's the cosmic.
Not just the stars, the whole universe, right?
Right. Well, because the thing is dirt simple. You hit it with a lightning bolt, and the lightning bolt turns into this woven French donut of, think of a French donut, a cruller with kind of ridges on it in a
Yep.
spiral pattern. And the harder you hit it, the better it works.
You're speaking my language. Imagine it like a donut. I was able to stay with you on that one. I get it. The traction on the top. So, Brent, what about you? How are you going to shape the future of fusion power there at Kepler? And of course, within the public company realm, which we're talking about, which is Renewal Fuels operating as American Fusion. Go ahead, Brent.
I think if we can deploy at the numbers that I've just talked about, I mean, really, we're a $1 trillion company in 5 to 10 years. And we are the game changer out there.
Love it.
And people haven't realized that yet, but we're out.
That's right. They haven't realized it yet. And that's what we do here at smallcapvoice.com. We are looking for the big company before they come. So the NVIDIAs, when they were just the $1.70 stock that they were. We are speaking once again with Brent Nelson, the CEO, and Dr. John Brandenburg, the Chief Technical Officer of Kepler Fusion, operating inside of Renewal Fuels, traded on the OTC under the ticker symbol RNWF, operating as American Fusion. Brent, as always, thank you so much for joining us once again today.
Okay, sir. Thanks very much for having us, and Godspeed.
Yes.
And Dr. Brandenburg, wonderful to hear from you. Love your background, love your passion here. Wonderful to have you. Thanks so much for your time.
Very good, Stuart. It's a pleasure and an honor.
All right, for Dr. John Brandenburg and Brent Nelson, I'm Stuart Smith saying be sure to hit subscribe, give us a like, and if you have a question or comment for this company, well, we've got the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. For these gentlemen here, once again, thanks so much for tuning in.